opportunity to turn off all mobile devices for the duration of the event. All or portions of this event and its participants may be captured by photography or video and used for news or promotional purposes. Standing or sitting in the aisles is not permitted. Smoking is not permitted inside any building on Brown's campus. In the event of an emergency, please walk calmly and quickly to one of the marked exits and move away from the building. Thank you for your cooperation.
All right, good afternoon. We are so delighted to have you here with us today and want to extend our welcome both to the parents and families who are here with us on this gorgeous afternoon here in Providence, and also the family members who are joining us on our live stream from around the world. So welcome, we're so glad to have you here. It is a really wonderful thing at the start here of Parent and Family Weekend to see so many parents and families together with their students enjoying the beautiful autumn leaves outside and going to get a cup of coffee together and snapping pictures and fitting in a shopping run. So we're so glad to see our parents and families together after what may have been a little bit of a break since move-in. My name is Corinne Backegard. I'm Associate Vice President for Campus Life and Dean of Students. And the title of our session today is Educating Your Student at Brown, Life and Learning Inside and Outside the Classroom. And our goal is to be able to share information about opportunities for your student to help them expand and deepen their experience and their engagement at Brown. We hope that you'll find this live panel today to be a really helpful complement to the other panels and presentations provided through the Parent and Family webinar series, as well as the other events happening over Parent and Family Weekend. So before we dive in, I want to take a really quick poll with a show of hands, find out a little bit more about who's in the room. So if you can let us know if you are the parent or family of a first-year student. Very well represented first years. If you are a parent or family of a sophomore student, welcome, we're glad to have you here. Any parents or families for juniors? Excellent, thank you. And for seniors? Oh, they were already off on their own. Okay. Well, we may be remotely and online. We have some senior parents, but we're so glad to have you all here today. So on stage this afternoon, we have staff from several units who are in the Division of Campus Life or the college. But as always, we want to underscore that those of us who are here in front of you today represent just a very small number of a much larger team of professional staff and colleagues who are here dedicated to your student success. So I will introduce our panelists in just a moment, and then I'll begin by asking each panelist a question that they'll get a chance to answer to get us started, and then we'll turn to questions that you will submit over the QR code that we'll show on the slide. And as always, if you have any questions that are specific to your student's situation, just stay after. I think many of us will be available to linger after the panel, and we can answer those questions if they're really particular, or you can contact family@brown.edu. Okay, so joining me here on stage, I am delighted to introduce Brenda Ice, Assistant Vice President for Residential and Community Living, Adam Pallant, Clinical Director for Health Services, Gilda Mosaday, Deputy Dean of the College for Academic Advising, Peggy Chang, Director of the Curricular Resource Center and Associate Dean for the College for Curricular Engagement, and Vincent Harris, Associate Dean and Director of the Brown Center for Students of Color. So Peggy, I'm going to start for the first question for you. As the director of the Curricular Resource Center, you do a lot of work to help students navigate the open curriculum. Can you talk about how families can support their students as they navigate the many options that are available to them?
Sure. Can you hear me? Yeah, whoa. Whoa, okay. Again, my name is Peggy Chang, and I wear 3 different hats. I mean, probably more than that, but the 3 relevant today. I'm the director of a center called the Curricular Resource Center. Sometimes we use the tagline for peer advising. I'm also an academic advising dean in the college with Dean Mosaday, and I am also the director of undergraduate studies for students who do independent concentrations. I think I will let you know, especially first-year parents, families, that there are two kinds of advising at Brown: the formal, organized advising, and the kind of informal, make it what you will advising. So all first years, you probably know, have a faculty or staff advisor, first-year academic advisor, and a peer advisor called a Meiklejohn. My office has 30 peer advisors that work there, and then we are known as a general peer-to-peer advising center. So, for example, a student came by the CRC and said to me, I'm a first year from Canada, and I thought I was going to be an IAPA, or an International Public Affairs concentrator, and now I'm not so sure. I'm in the intro class, I'm not liking it that much, and my friends told me, you know, you need to talk to somebody. So she heard about the CRC, and she dropped in, and I talked with her about the different pathways. She's like, you know, I love so many things, but now that I'm here, I'm not quite sure what I want to do. So I asked her about the activism that she was involved with when she was in high school. And then she said something funny. It's like, well, that's the thing I do on the side. That's not the thing I want to study. I need to do something serious for what I study. And then, you know, we just had a conversation about that. So a lot of advising just happens. It's almost like in the air. It's everywhere. And sometimes students need to kind of think about and be reflective about, you know, I have a question right now, or I want to have a conversation right now. So the CRC is just one place where those conversations happen.
Thank you. All right, Gilda, the next question is for you. Can you describe the advising support that exists for students as they explore and make decisions about how to approach the open curriculum during their academic journey?
Sure, I would be happy to do that. So the open curriculum, I'm sure you've heard about it, but it's one of the hallmarks at Brown. Essentially, students here don't have specific course requirements that they have to meet besides the ones that are designated for their concentration that they declare. And so, as Dean Chang was describing, when you matriculate to Brown, you get an exploratory advisor who's a faculty or staff member, along with a Meiklejohn peer advisor, and that individual will kind of guide you in exploring the curriculum. We firmly believe in students taking risks, taking classes that they maybe never thought they had an interest in. I'm sure you've heard from your student about shopping period. So shopping period is a wonderful time where students can drop in and out of classes during the first couple of weeks of the semester to really solidify what courses they want to take. And so once the student reaches their fourth semester, by the end of the fourth semester, they'll declare their concentration. At that point, they'll be assigned a concentration advisor. That person is a faculty member within the academic department, a subject matter expert for what they're going to study. They can continue to meet with their exploratory advisor about other things, but really they're going to mostly meet with their concentration advisor. In addition to those two advisors, we have college advising deans. So I oversee financial advising, international student advising, class year advising. And so those are staff members that are in the college that can really guide students through a lot of the decisions that they're making. And I think the peer advising is really central to the advising experience that students have here as well.
Thank you. Adam, oh no, I'm sorry, I jumped too far ahead. Vincent comes to you next. Can you tell us about the ways that students engage with the identity centers on campus, and if there are leadership opportunities for students as they progress through their college careers?
Yes. Hey, y'all. I'm from the South, so I'll say y'all a lot. So my role is to serve as the Associate Dean and Director of the Brown Center for Students of Color. But that's just one of 6 different identity centers. We have the LGBT Center, which recently opened up a beautiful new building called Stonewall House. We have the Office of Military Affiliated Students, which is known as OMAS for short. We have the Global Brown Center, which supports our global and international-based students. We have UFly Center, which support our undocumented and first-gen students. And we have the Sarah Doyle Center for Women and Gender. And at each of these centers, your students are able to participate in student employment opportunities that salaries range from full-time to part-time. And part of those part-time workers are our front desk student workers. They're the front face of our centers. You see them when you come in. They're hourly roles. They help with our newsletters. And each of our centers have those. They help with our website and keeping the centers clean. The majority of all of our centers have standalone buildings, but some of them are embedded within academic buildings, so that's pretty cool, that intersectionality. But a section of these identity centers also have peer counselors, and that's the hallmark, I think, of most of our centers. These peer counselors, similar to the Meiklejohn Advisings, but it's just about their experiences as a student here at Brown, based off of their identities. So we have our MPC peer counselors out of the BCSC, which supports identity and cultural-based peer mentoring. We have our SDC and LGBT peer counselors, which supports identities related to queer and gender and spaces. And we also have our UFly peer counselors, which supports our student leaders who identify as undocumented. And all of these centers produce programs. For example, we brought Angela Davis here as the BCSC last spring, and our student leaders helped to craft and promote that throughout the entire school, and she was actually up here right on this stage. Gender-affirming clothing cares out of our LGBT and SDC space. The Veterans Day celebrations are coming up, and students are being supportive to pay. They're being paid for and also able to support that development. And the IVG conference was just here at Brown a couple of weeks ago, and students led alongside professional staff to develop that. So we're excited to say that our student leaders are engaged throughout all of the centers, and their abilities to do so are led from a payment opportunity, but students can still support us by volunteering if that's their choice, but we pay them first.
All right. Adam, do you mind telling us about what some of the most common issues are that you're seeing in health services these days, and how can parents and families help support students with their health and well-being?
Sure. It's so nice to see your folks. All your kids are going to get sick, and they'll be fine. Get ready. Brown is an institute of higher education. It's also a daycare. And your kids are snotty and on top of each other. So every single one of them is gonna, sometime this year, gonna get a green snotty nose, cough, puke, have a stomach ache, and they're gonna call you and cry because they're gonna think they're gonna fail, and we'll help them, but they'll be fine. So one of the things that you need to be sort of aware of is that in one bucket, the simple answer is that the common illnesses that your kids had in daycare are going to actually show up again here because of the living circumstances that they're in. And it'll build their immune systems, and it'll be fine, and they'll get less sick in their future, and don't worry about it. There's a slight second bucket that may be a little more subtle that I do want to bring up as food for thought. When you take out the common contagious routine viral illnesses that your kids are for sure going to get, the most common concerns that walk into our health center are fatigue, insomnia, feeling like you can't think clearly or straight, like you might have ADD or there's something wrong with your brain. More than half of what comes into the health center are individuals are coming in with what we call as physicians somatic sensations and complaints that are predominantly being driven from more of a sense of emotional imbalance. This is a developmental stage where your kids are thinking, I have 4 years to turn into an adult. Because when I walk out the door, I'm supposed to know what I'm going to do for the rest of my life, if I'm going to have a partner, 1-car garage, 2-car garage, what are taxes? Those people are stronger than me, prettier than me, faster than me, smarter than me. What if I don't get into med school? I could go on. They're going to be fine, but many, many students present to the health center saying, I don't feel good. And part of what we'll need to do and what the support I ask of you is to say, maybe you don't feel good because you're frightened or you're not feeling like you've got your feet firmly on the ground, and we're here with you to help you through that. But to also be able to say, in the role of parents, brother, family, it's hard, but you're going to be okay. You matter, what you got's enough, and you can worry about med school, have a drink. No, water.
Thank you, Adam. Brenda, can you tell us, since so many of the families indicated that they have first-year students, can we talk about the transition from orientation into the first year of the residential experience? And, for example, how the student staff and the professional staff would be working to help students get connected and make friends?
Sure. Hello, everyone. So at the end of our orientation experience, you went home and did your thing, and students began their academic journey with their first day of class. But that didn't end for our team. We began to think about what should happen beyond the orientation experience. There's a lot of information that we provide to students in those first 5 days, and we recognize that it's a lot to take in. And so we actually expanded our program a few years ago to actually create weeks of welcome so that we give greater exposure over our extended period of time and not try to concentrate in the first 5 days of their orientation experience. So as classes were beginning, our weeks of welcome also rolled out. This was exposure to existing programs or offices that they had already interacted with during orientation, or a chance to actually connect with those offices that couldn't fit into our schedule. And so that happened through most of September. Opportunities, all optional, but a way for students to kind of integrate themselves slowly into the campus environment here at Brown. Interior to the campus environment in our residential spaces, our community coordinators, our area coordinators, which are our professional staff members, began their planning efforts of engaging the community residentially. So students should have seen engagement, what we call engagement hours from our community coordinators, where they just simply sit in the lounge or in a common space and hold open office hours, an opportunity to come together with nothing formal in place except that I am your community coordinator, stop by, say hello, and while you're there, you'll probably interact with other students on the floor in the building as another way to start to build in those kind of smaller networks. As we moved into the latter part of September, those community coordinators then started to make more concentrated formal programs available to students and continue that throughout the semester. Our area coordinators also have a task of creating what we call signature events. And so you'll start to see a pattern here. We are creating opportunities almost on a daily basis of programs and opportunities for students to find their place and space. That doesn't always have to be, please attend this event and learn this outcome. It can and really should be about, come to this space, meet someone new, learn a new concept or idea, challenge your thinking about a particular program or event, and that's the way we've continued that kind of thread of what we expect for you from orientation all throughout the academic year with our community coordinators, residential life staff, and our Bruno Fellows, which are an extension of our orientation who work with us year-round. And so they're continuing that thread as well and creating more programs that bring the orientation groups back together as kind of mini reunions throughout the year.
Thank you. So I see that our QR code is back available on the main screen, so please go ahead and scan that to submit our questions. So we'll start working through those that you're submitting to us. So the first question, Brenda, here, I'm going to summarize as being about renovation and upkeep for the residence halls as it pertains to either air conditioning or washing machines. And if you can talk a little bit about the process for maybe high level about renovation and renewal and submitting work orders and how the residence halls are maintained. Just in brief.
Sure. This will take the rest of the session. What I will say is that I am confident that as you did your tours and walking around, you're aware that we opened up 3 new residence halls in the last year and a half with Sternly Commons, Chen Family Hall, and Danoff Hall, expanding our housing portfolio. It is our understanding that there are no more opportunities for new construction, and so we are now turning inward to think about the renovation and renewal effort of our existing buildings. That's not to say that we haven't been attending to them while waiting for the new construction, but we are aware that we do need to make some strides to kind of update those spaces. And it is in partnership with our colleagues in facilities management that we're looking at ways that we can make more concentrated efforts for long-term solutions instead of the piecemeal by work order solution building. And so we've been in partnership over the last year and a half developing a housing master plan that this summer will begin to, summer of 25, will allow us to start making those steps at improvement to those residential spaces. On a day-to-day basis, our students should see general activity from facilities management team from a custodial point of view, cleaning the residential spaces with regularity. If at any time they feel like it's not with regularity or the conditions are not what they need it to be, on the back of all of their ID cards is a facilities management service response team. They can simply call and put in a request for attention to be made. Specifically in the residential bathroom spaces, there are QR codes on every mirror that students can quickly scan and say, I'm in this space, it doesn't appear like it's been cleaned, or there's been something that's happened in this space and we'd like some immediate or follow-up attention in those particular spaces. So those can be those immediate actions. What I will say is that I would encourage students that even if it wasn't you that were responsible for the issue, the cleanliness, the concern in the particular space, please take an opportunity to just simply report it. The more opportunities that we can tell our facilities management team that this is an issue either in your room or in the building or even in any other building you might be in, it gives us as an opportunity, particularly when I'm meeting with their leadership, to say, let's talk about the patterns. We continue to see more reports from this particular building than another. What can we do differently to think about shifting the staffing model, or are there educational proactive ways that we can encourage our students to think differently about their utilization in that space? I hope I addressed that.
Yeah, thank you. Adam, there's a question about who do I contact if I have health concerns about my student?
Let me give the first answer, which is contact your student and ask your student to speak to us with you would be the most ideal scenario. If for some reason that you have a concern that you really want to talk about that would not include your student, obviously I want to be open to that, but want to know why, and you can call the health, I'm not going to give you the phone numbers, it's on the website. Just call the health services, share that you want to speak with the director of CAPS, Director of Health Services. CAPS is the psychologic unit. And myself or my second in command will be in touch with you. One of the things that I do want to reinforce, which is something that's always going to make some parents a little bit concerned, is that whenever we're talking about the care of a student who's 18 years and above, we always very much want that student to be part of the conversation. They are our patient and they're adults, whether or not you are convinced of that yet or not. By no means do we want there not to be communication between you and a student, and there may be times where it makes sense to talk to the clinician aside from the student, but by and large we want to have it as a family conversation, not one which is separated from the student themselves.
Okay, a question about the role of International Student Advisor and how they support students.
Sure. So our international students receive a robust orientation session when they arrived at campus. Within the college, Dean Chayang Pan has a team of 2 additional staff members that meet with students and address any concerns that they have, everything from course scheduling to immigration or visa status to travel. Really a lot of issues are kind of discussed in those advising conversations, and they also partner with Global Brown and other offices on campus to ensure that international students receive the support that they need while they're here.
Okay. I have another question. I think, Gilda, we'll keep this one with you if that's all right. My student called me and asked if I should drop this class. but as a parent, I have no idea if that's the right thing to do. Who should I have my student talk to if they need immediate feedback versus waiting for when a time slot would be available?
That's a great question. So if a student is contemplating dropping a course, I have some good news for you, which is that Brown's academic policies tend to be fairly liberal. So the student actually has until the last day of the semester to drop that course. And even on occasion, when a student forgets to drop a course and they receive an NC or no credit, it won't appear on their official transcript. But to answer the question, if a student's considering dropping a course, I think that the first place I would maybe start is with that professor or faculty member. So all our faculty hold office hours, and sometimes they're underutilized. And so I always talk to students about the concerns that they may have with the class, and then I ask them, have you gone to talk to the professor? And a lot of times, particularly first-year students, find that a little daunting. So we kind of role play or talk through what that would be like. And then they could make an appointment in the college. So the college has advising hours every day, drop-in advising hours. And if they simply Google Brown Speak with a Dean, they can make an appointment online and talk to someone either in person or virtually. I also think if the course is pertaining to their concentration, if they're an upper class student, that they're going to want to talk to that concentration advisor, because sometimes their courses are only offered in the fall or only offered in the spring, or there's a sequencing and it's a prerequisite for another course that the student wants to take. Maybe they need a substitution if they don't complete it during that year. So there's a lot of considerations that they would want to talk about.
Thank you. Adam, can you talk about any vaccination clinics upcoming for flu or COVID shots? And if so, how do students register?
Yeah, but I forgot the dates. The answer is we got them. So you're gonna have to look them up. Yeah, I know. I should have looked before I come here. I know, but you criticize me in your head. Don't tell me. We've already given out 3,500 flu shots in the last 2 weeks. We have 2 large clinics coming up. You don't have to register, but you have to know they exist. It's all covered by health fees and insurance. Nobody has to come in with cash. You just have to know that the clinic goes from 10 to 4 in the health services building. I think it's the 11th and 20th of November, I think. And please ask your child, your student, your whatever, to look up when the dates are. In the event that someone can't remember it, have them just come. We'll give them the stupid flu shot on the side. But we're trying to get everybody, when we have our brigades going, and everybody ready to go as quickly as possible.
All right, back to my colleagues in the college. Could you please describe the UTRA program, and maybe we should spell out what UTRA stands for, and how students apply and may be successful in applying for these research opportunities?
Sure, I can take that. So one of our signature programs is the UTRA, which stands for the Undergraduate Teaching and Research Assistantship, or the Romer UTRA Award. Some of the UTRAs are actually an opportunity for a student to work with a faculty member who's designing a new class. So they're helping the professor do some research to prepare for that class. The way it works is, and students who are first years can even apply for an UTRA, but I will say that one of the advisors in my office, she is currently getting her PhD in a STEM area from University of Pennsylvania. She was a computational biology concentrator, first-generation student. In her advising, I remember her saying, the research seems to be everywhere, just kind of like advising, but students sometimes are worried that if they don't get in on it right away, they're going to miss out. And I will say that it's an opportunity to explore research interests, but the UTRA is also an opportunity for students when they sort of have a better sense of really what their interests are. The way the program is designed for summer is there's an application deadline in early February. Students will see a list of the many opportunities available over the summer. They will submit an application and list the opportunities that they're most interested in. and there's an on-site faculty staff committee that reviews those. There are now increasingly more UTRAs that happen over the fall or spring semester as well. So my suggestion is if you're interested in the UTRA program, the website's very detailed. Dean Oludurtimi Adetunji in the college is in charge of the program. He has open hours. Students can meet with Dean Adetunji. Also, they can even just talk to faculty. They're instructors of classes that they're really enjoying. So the student who didn't like the one class she's taking, she's really, really interested in this other class. And that's a great opportunity to, just introduce yourself to the professor, open hours, and say, I'm interested in maybe learning more about your research, and do you do UTRAs over the summer? And just start that conversation. But Dean Adetunji is great, and if you're really curious about the UTRA program in particular, you could start with him.
Thank you. Brenda, could you talk a little bit about Greek life on campus, and particularly if students are allowed to pledge a fraternity or a sorority in their first year?
So our Greek letter organizations do fall under the umbrella of residential life, in part because many of them are housed in our residential spaces. We have both national and local chapters, and if you were to visit our ResLife website, you would be able to see the full detailed list of those organizations and express interest. What we tell students is that there's always an opportunity to explore and consider, but in your first full year, this fall and spring, you are not eligible to go through that recruitment process, but we are already beginning to think about the upcoming academic year for 25-26, and that's where we would encourage you, if you have interest, to start meeting with membership and figure out what their recruitment cycles look like. We have rolling recruitment cycles simply based off of the national versus local organizations, and so we don't have a set date that everyone must go through that particular process. So without giving you specific dates, I'm just going to refer you back to our ResLife website, and you would just simply type in a search of Greek life. There you would find those organizations and those leadership members of who you can reach out to. They typically will list their president and leadership as well as their recruitment chairs to learn more about their particular programs. In that vein, there are also organizations that we represent and support that don't have a residential component, but we still do sponsor them and create opportunities for them to take up space on our campus, host events that wouldn't otherwise be afforded to them because they don't live on campus and have access to those community spaces like the others.
Thank you. All right, I have two questions that I'm going to combine that are related to academic program. One is about how does a student pursue an independent concentration? And then I think a related question is about guidance for topics if a student wants to build their own degree course. So I'm going to kind of put those together in the spirit of independent study.
I love talking about because I probably, our office meets with dozens and dozens and dozens of students interested in independent concentrations, and maybe about a quarter to a third actually pursue one. I think independent concentrations are, in a sense, a gateway way of talking about trying to study. So, for example, I love just giving story examples to make it tangible. A first-year student came to my office yesterday. He took a gap year, and he worked in the Middle East during his gap year. He's particularly interested in genocide and reconciliation, and he is already in a first-year seminar with a professor teaching a course on that topic, and he's like, I really want to do an independent concentration in this area. So how do I start? And it's like, well, you've already started. You've articulated the concept that you're interested in. You already have a faculty member who wants to support you. But a lot of students are not that far along as a first year. They're just kind of curious. So our office is a place where I work with 3 students and get a load of these ICs. One student is doing an independent concentration in empathy and practice. Another student is doing a concentration in medical humanities and representation. That's what and the third is doing an IC in systems of power. So these three students work with me to advise all the students who are interested in ICs. We also still, so there was a time, Brown, in the 80s, I am told by an alum from class of 81 who worked at my center when he was a student and I wasn't a student. He was the independent studies coordinator, and there were 100 GISPs a year. Group Independent Study Project. Like, oh my goodness, I don't even know. So Brown was a much smaller school back then. Now we run about 30, maybe 35 a year. There's a GISP happening right now, actually on the university. They're looking at Brown's open curriculum. They're looking at like where the open curriculum should go in the future. They can come to my office to get advising from two students. One of those students is also a community coordinator. That's the other thing. Students who work in our centers, they all have multiple roles, and this advisor for independent studies also is a community coordinator in Keeney Quad. He is in that GISP about the university, and the other is a junior who did a GISP on engineering design or something like that. So it's a lot of fun. A lot of students are really excited when they talk to other students who are actually doing these things.
Thank you. Brenda, can you talk about the kinds of recreational events that might be offered residentially? For example, programs area coordinators might put on, and how might those be publicized? Where would students look to learn about those programs?
Sure. So what we have discovered just in the last few years is that the idea of paper flyers are kind of a thing of the past. And so while we would want to create bulletin boards and kind of create that exposure, in all of our events, both the ones that our community coordinators put on and the ones that are managed by our ACs and our Signature Res Life events tend to be through social media platforms. And so we take advantage of our Campus Life social media platforms, our Instagram, Facebook pages, and promote in that way. We also then ask our student leaders to then take advantage of sharing those stories. And so any communication or events that we want to promote beyond that particular floor, we're sharing with the student government organizations who also use their social media platforms to kind of get the communication out. That doesn't mean we don't still print a small handful of flyers and post on doors to kind of promote. That said, our area coordinators take a kind of broader approach of thinking about ways in which the entire campus community can participate in a particular event and not necessarily isolate it to the buildings of which they supervise. So one that we're very proud of and was the brainchild of one of our area coordinators is what we're calling they call it S Cubed, but it is our Sophomore Spirit series. And so it's actually programs designed throughout the entire academic year, targeting our second-year students as a way to get them engaged. We assume in their first year they know all of these things, like we kind of handhold them through their programming opportunities. In their junior year, they kind of know their people and are out and about during their and in their senior year, they're ready to think about life beyond Brown. But it is that sophomore or second-year experience where we make a lot of assumptions and then often find ourselves that they really haven't quite found the people, the ways in which they can connect, or how to actually get engaged. So this sophomore series is an opportunity to create mini social programs and events that brings in those second-year students. Most recently, they hosted a tailgate at one of our football games. And it was sponsored by the sophomore series, targeted for our second-year students, but all students were welcome and invited, and so that was one of those large-scale events. I do believe that there is a food truck event that is being planned for the spring event, and then we host what will now be our third year of what we call Res Giving, which is an opportunity for all residential students, planned and programmed primarily by our area coordinators, as a way of kind of creating a Friendsgiving opportunity for students if they choose or are leaving to go home for the Thanksgiving break. A week prior to that, we're bringing students together in community over food as just another networking. And so our programs that are happening with our area coordinators are very broad-based, thinking about the larger community that isn't always tied to a learning outcome other than just simply being together.
Thank you. So this is a question about tutoring. My student has said that it's really difficult to get a tutor for one of her classes. Do you have a position on using outside tutors?
Maybe we can both take this one. So there are group tutoring options for the Gateway Foundations classes in the STEM areas, for the introductory language classes, many of them. And they do fill up, but Dean Janet Peters is in charge of the program. She does take email from students all the time who are desperate to get a tutor and they're not able to get one. So definitely, she has told me, get on the wait list because spots open up all the time. She has also told me that if a student's really struggling, and there are many ways to think about support, so if you want to talk to me afterwards, I can hear more about the specific situation. It's really important for the student not to be too shy, afraid to talk to the instructor or the TA, because there is group tutoring, but there may be other ways to get support other than the tutoring program. For example, a little, I think, underutilized resource is the Math Resource Center. I had an advisee who then was my Meiklejohn for 3 years. He's right now, I think, getting his PhD in physics. This is a very strong student who had very strong math background, but he took a math class and he was having a hard time with it. So I told him about the Math Resource Center. It's open from Monday to Thursday, 8 to 10 p.m., 6 to 10 p.m., something like that. It's a grad student at the front of the room. It's an open session, and that might feel kind of weird, but he was saying, no, I just showed up, and then people are talking about their problems, you know, and they're doing it at the board, and I would come in, and it helped me get through the class. So this might be the first time your student is having a hard time, and that's weird. That feels weird, because they were probably the ones who were tutoring kids in their school, right? But there are also academic coaches in my center, and academic coaches are not subject content-based, but they are, many of them are STEM, but they're STEM, social sciences, humanities, and they help students with kind of unpacking what's going on and tackling different academic problems like study strategies, and there's a STEM workshop coming up, STEM Study Strategies workshop. So if the tutoring thing is the thing, though, that you want to learn more about, Dean Janet Peters or any one of the college advising deans, we can help unpack what are some other options.
Thank you. Our next question is about internships. What resources are available to support students in finding and applying for internships?
What resources aren't there? Oh my gosh. I mean, so tomorrow there's a big session about the new Brown Connect portal that just got launched by the Center for Career Exploration. I would definitely check that session out. But in a nutshell, there's a redesigned platform for alumni to student engagement. There are lots of internship opportunities potentially in that. And then I would say every single student, whether or not you feel like you want to do it. I remember, like, do as I say, not as I did. When I was like, oh, Career Center, I can't think about it. But it's so great because just, set up, it's called a handshake profile. You're actually going to get a ton of email once you set up that handshake profile, and all kinds of internship opportunities will come in. What the Career Center really hopes all students do is to set up a handshake profile, set up a Brown Connect profile, meet with a peer career advisor first, and then they are the gateway to helping students see all that is available in terms of internships and networking opportunities. It's pretty amazing. Yeah.
Thank you, Peggy. Gilda, is it possible for students to decide their concentrations before the 4th semester and get a faculty concentration advisor assigned to them sooner?
Yeah, so it's absolutely possible for students to just firmly know what they want to study and to declare that concentration early. But no fear, if they change their mind, they can always change it or retract that declaration and declare something else. I think during the first few semesters, it's nice to go talk to various concentration advisors that you're thinking of possibly concentrating in, just to see what the concentration's like, what co-curricular opportunities exist within that department, what research opportunities exist. Many of our concentrations have DUGs, which are departmental undergraduate groups, where upper class students that have declared or are concentrators within the department will kind of help guide first year, sophomore students and talk to them about their experiences that they've had within that particular concentration. And so that's really something that I impress upon students when they want to declare early. There's not too much of a benefit to doing it. So I have a lot of students who just want to get through those concentration requirements, spread them out, right? So every semester you should be taking an elective, something that interests you or something that you've heard about from one of your friends. During that shopping period that I was talking about, that's an excellent time to go to a course. You've read the description online, but actually go and sit in on a lecture, or go and sit in on a discussion and see if it's something that resonates with you. So although I appreciate someone wanting to declare early, I would tell them to keep exploring.
For this next question, I think I'd like to ask both Adam and Brenda to chime in from your point of view. The question is about supervision of students' substance and drinking abuse. But I think if we can think about how, kind of what the university's approach or what our developmental and advising approach is for students' use of maybe alcohol and other substances generally.
Go first?
Sure.
Okay. It's funny. I'm once again going to give you two answers. When you've seen one student who's perhaps had some trouble getting involved with substances, you've seen one. So what I want to be a little bit cautious about is generalizing to say there's an answer that fits all. Let me give you the broader approach, is that part of the health services unit is a program called Be Well, which is community education outreach, harm reduction, and guidance. They do an immense amount of work, at least in terms of education, workshops, peer interventions, discussions about caution and understanding the risks of substance use. Additionally, if people are running into problems, the door is always wide open, both with their group and with mine, for individuals who may be struggling with substance use. We are there to help them.
From my perspective, so we certainly lean into this kind of harm reduction approach, recognizing that there are legal requirements and you must be of legal drinking age, but the assumption is that if a student is going to partake, we at least want to make them aware of resources and support and subsequently the circumstances that come from drinking, whether you're of age or not. And so that is our partnership, particularly in residential life, working with the Be Well colleagues around educating our community coordinators so they become peer-to-peer education. Oftentimes what we hear is that our students know it but don't want to necessarily hear it from an administrator to say, do this, don't do this. And so this kind of peer-to-peer approach of saying, here are the ways in which we can educate you about the choices you're making, whether it's about alcohol or academic pursuits or what have you, we want you to hear it from peers to have that kind of better lens and understanding. We also recognize that our staff are not really in a place of kind of doing monitoring behind the door. And so we simply prepare and share students that we have expectations for those that are under the age, the legal drinking age, that these are the things. If we see something, we in fact will respond. That is not us saying, hide it from us, but we do want to make sure that we can appropriately respond and more importantly support you rather than move into this kind of punitive get you in trouble sort of approach. I think the other thing that we also want to make sure that we do is that we find ways to also connect beyond Be Well when we start to see patterns of use or misuse of our students of any age. And so that's also partnering with our other colleagues in campus life around student support services, the Office of Conduct, and CAPS, our counseling services, to kind of think more broadly about, is it a one-time use or are there other things lending itself to for students to feel like these become the choices they have to make to cope or kind of manage their experience here at Brown.
So also within the college, Lindsay Garcia is our Substance-Free Initiatives Dean, and she oversees a lot of various initiatives, including a large sober community of students, like student-led activities. It's called So Bear, which is really cute. But they go hiking together and have social events, so there is quite a lot of students that are sober, and it's welcomed on campus.
Thank you. I really like that these next two questions, I think, provide opportunity for everyone on the panel to answer. So one of the first question here is about, can we say more about the programs and resources, and I would say just the ways that we all work together to help address the sense of students feeling overwhelmed. So maybe what are some strategies, some programs, initiatives, efforts that we undertake to help students address feeling a little bit overwhelmed sometimes?
I can jump in. I've been chilling over here, so I'll start. I think that's the part of the core of a lot of our identity centers. Students find that they're a home away from home, but they're literally a place where they can come and just take off their mask, not perform the best in class that day. You know, you didn't get elected as XYZ in this board. Just come here and just chill, take a nap, get some food in many of our kitchens, which a lot of our identity centers have, and really, truly become and feel what it feels like to just be and just be still. And I think that that is how we like to show up as identity center leaders. We don't lead with, how's your class? What did you do today? We lead with, how are you? What's going on in your life? What you're doing this weekend? So we're trying to create spaces where students can really see themselves first and do some more internal work. And I think that helps with the feeling of overwhelmingness. And in that sense of just being and chilling and taking naps, we also have programs that celebrate their identities. So for the LGBT Center, there was recently Coming Out Day, where there was this beautiful rainbow door that folks could walk through and just take photos and embrace themselves as their queer identity. Like I mentioned, the Sarah Doris Center and Women and Gender, they're celebrating their 50th anniversary. There's a large litany of programs coming up, and they're able to celebrate their identity as cisgender or they, them, trans women, and any identity as gender. And then for the BCSC, we have upcoming events that celebrate unapologetically their identities. So we have a Black Family Soiree tomorrow, which a lot of our Black families can come and enjoy and get a sense of what our Black students experience. And on Sunday, there'll be a multiracial family brunch, both in Casper, and that's a place where students can just take off the academic hat and just be themselves, like a cookout, like a brunch, and just enjoy themselves, and return on Monday and get back at it.
I'm happy to go next. I think one of the things that we do, particularly in residential life, is not necessarily create this idea of a residential curriculum. So if you already have students at other colleges, this idea of an RA programming model or the ways in which they must learn or program to certain learning outcomes. Ours are far more broad, which creates an opportunity to just simply, to use Dr. Harris's language, to just be. I often tell our students, our community coordinators, when they're programming, there's absolutely nothing with programs that are just about ice cream and bubble gum. No other learning needs to happen except to bring people together in community. So when we think about our learning outcomes, it really is just about a sense of connection. And so we're not asking anyone to be on, to speak, to perform. It really is to just come into the space, and if all you do is grab a cookie and leave, at least you engaged in that way with our community coordinators, with our area coordinators, or other members in the residential spaces. Eventually, you'll see that cookies will continue to be a part of it, and maybe we shift, and now we've moved from just offering it to actually creating demos, and now you get to make it. And we'll slowly pull at those opportunities to get you far more engaged. But I also think that learning doesn't have to be about something prescribed that we write. The learning is just about being in community with others.
And I tend to work in this space of mostly one-on-one interactions. You know, I'm going to include their counseling psychological centers as well as our primary care center. And we all have a general practice style of, I see you. You're still there. What are you measuring? Why do I care about you? Our relationship matters. And so part of what I'm hoping your student will do is also make connections if it's right for them, either in the primary care staff or the CAP staff, because sometimes you just need to be saying, even if you don't get an A in your organic chemistry, you're still my equal on this planet, I still see you. Deep breath.
I'll just add for the academics, students can take any course at Brown, pass, no pass, which is remarkable. So even for their concentration, they can take it pass, no pass. I talk to them about the ramifications if they want to go to graduate school or professional school, but for the most part, it's completely fine to do so. We have students who take every course throughout their entire time here, pass, no pass. We don't have a GPA. Students can also take less than 4 credits in one semester in the beginning of their academic career and once again in the latter half of their academic career. They can also more purposely talk about a course load reduction with an academic dean and what that would entail if they wanted to take more than one semester, part-time, so less than 3 or 4 credits. And then lastly, I think just having a support network. So I think when they matriculate to campus, that first group of students that they're with on advising day and the upper class student that's their peer advisor or their Mickle-John, many times they bond on just kind of the stressors of being there, having to register, maybe not getting all the courses that they thought they were going to for that first fall. And so just having a support network that you can be open and honest about when you encounter difficulties is really important, because what they'll find is that they are not alone. So if you think of the analogy of like ducks, they look so graceful as they float across that lake, but underneath the water, they're all like vigorously paddling, or whatever it's called. And that's our students. Oftentimes, students feel like everyone else has it together except for them, and that's just not true. And I tell them that when they meet with me. I say, you're the 5th student today who's been worried about organic chemistry. And there's a sense of relief. So I think when they reach out to you and they talk to you about feeling overwhelmed or feeling stressed remind them that they're not alone. Remind them to go to faculty office hours. Remind them to really be kind to themselves. In some ways, students need to fail. That's part of the learning process. And I know, like, it takes like, whoa, but think of any great leader. They have had failures and they've overcome them, right? There's nothing that students can't overcome in their academic journey here. There will always be a way for them to achieve their goals. So have them come talk to an advising dean, ensure that they have a support network of peers, so it's normalized for them and they're comfortable talking about these stressors, but they're not alone.
Oh, and I forgot, we have an acupuncture program.
Well, I see that we're at the end of our time together, and I just want to thank all of our panelists for being here this afternoon and joining us. Thank you, parents and families, for being here with us. We do invite you to enjoy and attend the Family Weekend keynote, which is our Climate Future Students as Changemakers. That will be with President Christina Paxson and Professor Kim Cobb. That's here at 6:30 in this auditorium, and also live streamed for families who are joining us remotely, but we will need just a few minutes to turn over the auditorium. So I think we'll stay for a few minutes if we can, panelists, for those specific questions, but thank you so much for joining us.